Hello, denizens of the universe. I'm the Romance Scrooge. The other day, I watched an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation called The Inner Light. In short, the Enterprise crew comes across a mysterious deep space probe that makes a mental connection or link with Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Said probe pretty much contains a simulated reality or experience that was put together by a long-dead civilization on the planet Catan. Captain Jean-Luc experiences 50-plus years of a life on a long-dead planet. He has a wife, kids, gets as far as having grandchildren, learns how to play the flute, and this particular simulated reality was meant to be a really emotional, intimate experience. I read a blog post about this particular episode somewhere else, and this isn't necessarily going to be the truest to life experience of what life may have been like on that planet. If you think about it, this particular program or experience was handcrafted and tailored by scientists and the peoples of this planet. They wanted to condense all the nuances and parts of their culture, history, their overall civilization, into as polished a presentation as they possibly could. They thought this would be a lot more meaningful than writing everything down or just keeping an inventory or record of their history and their people. If someone went so far as to be part of their society, even if these were simulated characters, even though these were simulated characters, even though this particular society itself didn't really exist, it mirrored something that did exist at one point in time. The experience is so real, of course it's going to latch onto them, connect with them in such a way that they're going to record what they saw. The history of this planet and civilization is going to continue on. The thing about bringing up that this is probably the most polished presentation of it, again, there probably are some nuances or parts about the history and civilization that got lost in translation or putting together this program. It kind of brings up something that would otherwise get glossed over when looking at this particular setup or story. How history really is a summary or highly condensed version of something fairly dramatic, painted with several shades of gray, has so many different nuances, probably lasted over the course of tens, if not hundreds of years. Just how much gets lost between recording down historical events and someone gleaning or just looking over what happened in said historical events. Why there is some effort to keep journals or personal records on the part of the people who lived there and experienced it. Why records like the man who saw Pompeii destroyed or who managed to escape a similar situation to Pompeii, why that particular record isn't only historically relevant or something to chase after, but a snapshot of what it was like living at that particular time and that kind of civilization, getting a more personal viewpoint or perspective. That is more likely to stay with somebody than a dry historical record. There's something to the more personalized account. That's probably what the scientists who made the probe were thinking when they designed it. Though the thing is, Jean-Luc lost 50-plus years of another lifetime. It's like he's displaced in time, displaced from what used to be just normal, everyday life and routine. He has a far different perspective about getting married and having kids because of this other lifetime he experienced. He's a little bit more open to it than he'd ever been before. There's a continuation of Star Trek The Next Generation, where Jean-Luc ends up getting together with Dr. Beverly Crusher. But he's reluctant or hesitant for the longest time to get married and have kids because it's going to take a while to completely move on or cope with losing another complete life with a wife and kids and grandchildren. It would be pretty hard to look at the decision of whether or not to have a kid or get married again and not compare and contrast what this previous experience was like, not go through the pain of losing it all. There's another episode in The Next Generation where Picard shares his flute playing with another member on his crew. There's a budding romance there. It's a very intimate, meaningful moment for him when he's able to tell her, I appreciate being able to share my music with you. It lets me relive or keep the memory alive of this other life I experienced on Catan. That's why he spends so much time trying to learn how to play the flute or keep up his particular skills and abilities. Why he spends so much time listening back through compositions and trying to pin down the exact right way to play them. When he plays the flute, it's his one connection to this life that never really existed and isn't really personally meaningful to anyone other than him. It's a few minutes where he can recapture that magic, feel like he's close to this family that he never really had. That's the significance of the flute in this particular episode, or other times when you see Picard looking at the flute thoughtfully and trying so hard to figure out how to play it in just the right way, or why he spends so much time at it. How many series actually take the time to take an experience like that, where a character pretty much lives another entire lifetime, and bring it up in other episodes, or future chapters or installments of something? Well, let's just keep it at what it is. Future episodes of a longer, ongoing series or show. If you have a book or series of books, yeah, the other lifetime is going to get referenced again. It's going to be a major point. Like, in the Chronicles of Narnia series, the original kids that went to Narnia, talking about the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, not the book before that, they do appear in later books, and when they go back to Narnia, they look at elements of it and reminisce on their other lifetime in this other world. It did have some impact on them as characters, and I think there's at least one character that reappears in another book, and it does affect the guy. It does affect how he approaches or goes about his next adventure in Narnia, how frustrated he is that he lost being a king, what he gained, what kind of experiences he'd had. In regards to a more episodic series, though, living another life in another dimension, if it happens at all, if something like that happens, it usually just gets brushed off or shelved. Though the most recent example I can think of, or one of the ones that comes to mind, Marco in the Star Versus episode Running with Scissors. This isn't necessarily a case where it gets shelved, but I'm going to look at it as a take on going to another dimension and living a completely different life there, but how different it is from an experience like Jean-Luc's. Like, you can have a character live another entire lifetime somewhere else, but not have it be this big, really significant part of their character. It does contribute to Marco's character development in the series, just not in a substantial way as his budding romance with Jackie or even his interactions with Star. Where I'm coming from when I say this is that when you look at Marco's experience in this other dimension with Hekapoo, it's more akin to role-playing or really getting invested in some kind of video game character, some kind of fantasy experience. While Marco does experience 10, 20 plus years of life there, when you look at the scene where he appears as an adult, I'd argue he doesn't necessarily have the maturity or perspective of an adult. He carries and conducts himself in the same way an action star from a kung fu or action-adventure movie would. Like, his tone of voice is roughly comparable to that of his sensei. He's doing this on purpose. Pretty much as he grew up or tried to figure out how to chase down Hekapoo or deal with the situation in this other universe, he became one of these action heroes in a kung fu movie. He adopted a persona, and it's just that his physical appearance and skills matched it or synced up closely enough that it was that much easier to slide into being this character or pretend that he was said character. And there is some significance to him learning these fighting skills or living out these particular experiences. Now, the big takeaway from the episode was this is Hekapoo's introduction. She's an ornery little shit. She and Marco kind of had a connection. They're friends. But it would be interesting to see another episode showing Marco taking an interest in learning how to use a sword or showing more advanced fighting techniques and skills than he would before. Like, these skills that he picked up in this other dimension transferred or translated over. Not an exact one-on-one kind of translation, but enough that it's easier for Marco to learn how to wield a sword or pick up a new fighting technique than it would have otherwise, because he has the previous training and experience, all the practice, all the years he spent in this other dimension learning how to hone these skills. I can't see it being a one-on-one translation since, well, okay, I'm going to edit that bit out. In regards to what else this particular episode offers to Marco's character growth and development, it is up there next to episodes like Red Bell or even Bon Bon the Birthday Clown. Marco becomes a lot more assertive, confident, take charge. You can see a lot of this in the TV movie, actually. The fact that he isn't quite as reluctant or hesitant to make moves as he used to be. It's more like he makes a plan and he sticks to it. He can think on his feet. He is a lot more take action kind of guy. Before, he'd be a bit reluctant to do much of anything. It was usually his hand was forced and he had to step in and do something now because Star was in trouble, or there would be some kind of immediate consequences to his actions. There was more pressure behind him. There is some pressure or set of consequences here, but it just feels like, I guess the biggest thing to consider here is Marco's acting on his own merit. He is pretty much flying solo, going by, this is what I can do. I'm pretty much on my own here until I can find Star or team up with somebody or whatever else. Heck, he was even the mastermind, technically, of the Law Resistance group. It shows more of that take action, assertive part of his personality. I'm not quite sure if we'd have the same Marco in this situation if it'd been Marco from the very first episode. He's adaptable and he's smart, yes, but having that confidence and assertive attitude and manner to him, he's a lot more likely to do something or step up and do something than he would have otherwise. If it'd been season 1 episode 1 Marco in that dungeon with King River, I think he would have been the one that needed a pep talk or needed someone to help him figure things out. Here, he just gets right to work. He's got a job to do. He's got a buddy that he needs to help out. He's gonna do what he needs to do to get this done. It just feels like the whole save kid thing is not nearly as relevant a part of his character anymore. Like, it's definitely been overcome and just interested to see where things go from here. Though the discussion about what running with scissors would bring to the table other than Marco's scissors is the idea that some of these skills or experiences would translate over, that certain skills or traits would come a bit more easily because he experienced them in this other dimension. Or at least the muscle memory would be there, that kind of thing. The only reason why I brought this up is that if you look at somebody living another lifetime in another dimension, or even another universe, simulated reality, etc., the most immediate thought that comes to mind is, this has to be a character-shaping moment. This has to be a dramatic experience, that somebody lost a significant chunk, something near or precious to them when they lost this lifetime. Well, it depends on what kind of narrative or story you're writing. It depends on who the character is, what the circumstances are. In the case of Jean-Luc Picard, it was treated as a fairly dramatic character-shaping moment. In regards to Marco, his set of circumstances and experiences fall in line with the more light-hearted comedic tone for Star Versus. The episode is significant, but in such a way that it's not going to impact Marco to the point where his character is changed in the same way as Jean-Luc Picard's. It's more of a positive impact. It was treated in, again, the best way to describe it, it was pretty much 10, 20 plus years of living out the ultimate fantasy life kind of thing. It was more like a true video game experience, a vicarious kind of thing. Enough to where he gets invested or learns some things, but it's not going to hold dramatic, irreversible repercussions on when he returns to his normal life. The biggest thing that happened was that he forgot his password. He forgot his password that, in short-term memory, it's something that you take for granted. Like, you remember, like, 5-6 passwords at a time for the 6 different pages you'd have, how to log in your computer, stuff like that. It pretty much just showed that, yes, there was a significant passage of time. That it does stick or hold some bearing to Marco's character. So, that scene was probably the most impactful or dramatic you're going to get. Some of us fans that were in the boat of, is Marco going to be a 30-year-old returning to a 14-year-old's body? How awkward is this going to be? No, we didn't get anything that heavy, but the scene where he forgot his password, that is significant in bringing up. That is significant in saying, the writers probably are thinking, we will address this, or this will get referenced every once in a while.